Ma'am, you don't belong in this seat. It's reserved for someone more distinguished. The words sliced through the first-class cabin of Skyalite Airlines Flight 217, sharp as a blade. Delivered with icy politeness by flight attendant Lauren Mitchell. Her smile was practiced, her tone coded in professionalism, but the sting of her words landed like a slap. In seat 2A, Emily Harper, a 32-year-old black CEO, froze for a split second, her fingers pausing on the laptop she'd just opened, the plush, leather-lined cabin, bathed in the soft glow of San Francisco's morning light filtering through the windows at San Francisco International Airport, SFO, suddenly felt suffocating. Before we dive deep into this story of courage and confrontation, I want to know, where are you watching from? Are you in a bustling city like New York, a quiet suburb, or somewhere across the globe? Share your thoughts, because this story belongs to all of us who've ever faced injustice. Emily Harper wasn't just any passenger. She was the founder and CEO of Tech Trend Innovations, a billion-dollar AI company revolutionizing bias mitigation tools for customer service. At 32, she was a rising star, bound for New York to deliver the keynote at the Global Ethics and Technology Conference, where she was hailed as a visionary leader. Her curls were neatly pinned, her navy blazer crisp, and her eyes carried the quiet confidence of someone who'd earned her place. She'd chosen seat 2A, a window seat at the front of the cabin, for its comfort and workspace, reserved weeks ago, paid in full with her Skyalite Platinum membership, the airline's highest loyalty tier. Yet, as she settled in, a shadow loomed over her. Susan Reynolds, a sharply dressed white woman in her late 50s, boarded the plane with an air of entitlement that seemed to command the cabin. Her designer watch gleamed under the overhead lights, and her tailored gray suit screamed wealth. Susan stopped beside Emily, her eyes narrowing as she glanced at the boarding pass in her hand. Then at Emily. "This is my seat," Susan declared, loud enough for nearby passengers to turn their heads. "I always sit in 2A. It's practically reserved for me." Her voice dripped with arrogance, each word a proclamation of her assumed superiority. Emily looked up, her expression calm, but with a flicker of surprise. She'd booked this seat meticulously, arrived on time, and held the platinum card that matched Susan's status. Yet, the weight of Susan's gaze, laced with judgment, hinted at something deeper, an assumption that Emily, with her darker skin and understated attire, didn't belong in this exclusive space. The cabin grew quiet, the hum of pre-flight preparations fading as tension crackled in the air. Lauren Mitchell, the lead flight attendant, approached with a strained smile, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. "Pardon me, ma'am," she said to Emily, her voice polite but edged with impatience. "There seems to be a mix-up. We need you to move to accommodate one of our regular platinum guests." Lauren's eyes flicked toward Susan, who stood with her arms crossed, tapping her fingers impatiently on the armrest of the nearby seat. The implication was clear. Susan was the right kind of platinum member, and Emily was not. Emily's heart rate quickened, but her face remained composed. She reached into her purse, pulled out her platinum membership card, and held it up with steady hands. "I'm a platinum member," she said, her voice firm yet courteous. "This seat was assigned to me when I booked 2 weeks ago. I have the confirmation right here." She tapped her phone, pulling up the digital boarding pass for Lauren to see. Lauren's smile stiffened, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before it hardened again. She glanced at Susan, as if seeking approval from the wealthier passenger rather than enforcing airline policy. "I understand, ma'am," Lauren said, her tone now laced with condescension. "But this seat is typically reserved for our long-standing platinum members, like Ms. Reynolds here." I'm sure we can find you another first-class seat with similar amenities. The cabin's atmosphere shifted. Passengers nearby began to notice, their eyes darting between Emily, Lauren, and Susan. A few pulled out their phones, discreetly recording Sarah Evans, a young journalist in a gray hoodie seated in row 3B, adjusted her glasses and aimed her camera at the scene, her sharp instincts kicking in. She sensed this wasn't just a seating dispute, it was something uglier. Susan leaned forward, her voice a hushed but commanding whisper. I sincerely hope this won't delay our flight over such a trivial matter. Ms. Mitchell, you know how important my schedule is? Her words were a thinly veiled order, and as she spoke, she slipped a small stack of crisp $100 bills into Lauren's coat pocket while pretending to adjust her Hermes bag in the overhead bin. The gesture was subtle, but not subtle enough for Sarah's lens to miss. Emily caught the exchange, her jaw tightening. She understood this wasn't about a seat anymore. It was about power, privilege, and prejudice. I'm not moving, she said, her voice steady, locking eyes with Lauren. I followed every rule, paid for this seat, and have the same status as Ms. Reynolds. If there's a problem, I'd like to speak to your supervisor. Lauren hesitated, her professional mask slipping for a moment. She glanced at Susan, then back at Emily, before stepping away to summon Michael Carter, the first-class supervisor. Michael, a tall man in his 40s with a stern demeanor, strode down the aisle, his presence commanding attention. Ms. Harper, he said, his voice low but firm. There's been a mistake with the seating. This seat is reserved for our specially prioritized customers. We need you to cooperate and move. The word specially prioritized hit like a needle, aimed not just at Emily, but at anyone who'd ever felt excluded for not fitting the mold of privilege. Emily met Michael's gaze, unflinching. I'm a platinum member. Mr. Carter, this is my assigned seat. I have no reason to give it up. Her words were calm, but they carried a weight that made Michael's forced smile twitch. Behind him, Susan smirked, her eyes gleaming with triumph, as if she'd already won. Lauren shifted uneasily, her hands trembling slightly, caught between her training and the bribe in her pocket. Passengers whispered, some exchanging looks of indignation. Sarah's camera stayed steady, capturing every word, every glance. A middle-aged man in row 4A muttered to his neighbor. She showed her card. This is outrageous. Michael leaned closer to Emily, lowering his voice to a threatening whisper. Don't make this difficult. Ms. Harper, we can make your flight very unpleasant if you don't comply. His words were a stark reminder of the power he believed he held at 3,000 feet. But Emily didn't flinch. She sat taller, her gaze fixed on the window, gripping her boarding pass like a shield. The cabin felt like a powder keg, waiting for a spark, unbeknownst to Michael, Lauren, or Susan. They were standing on the edge of a crisis that would shake Skyalite Airlines to its core. Emily Harper, the woman they dismissed, held not just a platinum card but the power to unravel their world. And Sarah Evans, with her phone still recording, was about to light the fuse. The first-class cabin of Skyalite Airlines Flight 217 from San Francisco to New York was a pressure cooker, the air thick with unspoken outrage. Sarah Evans, a 28-year-old journalist seated in row 3B, gripped her phone, her camera capturing every damning moment. She'd recorded the bribe, Susan Reynolds, the self-entitled VIP, slipping a stack of crisp $100 bills into flight attendant Lauren Mitchell's pocket with a smug nod. She caught Supervisor Michael Carter's icy threat to Emily Harper, the 32-year-old black CEO who refused to relinquish her rightful seat 2A, and she filmed the chilling indifference of Captain David Sullivan, who stood at the cabin's edge, arms folded, as if Emily's dignity was irrelevant. Sarah's footage was no mere video. It was a ticking bomb, and she was about to detonate it. Emily sat tall in seat 2A, her platinum membership card still in hand. Her eyes locked on the window as Michael's threat echoed. "We can make your flight very unpleasant." The words hung heavy, but Emily's resolve was heavier. She knew this wasn't just about a seat. It was about a system that valued wealth and whiteness over fairness. As Michael signaled for airport security, the cabin's whispers grew louder. Passengers exchanged glances, some indignant, others uneasy. A woman in row 4C murmured, "She paid for that seat. This is wrong." Sarah's camera panned, capturing the mounting tension. Two security officers in dark blue uniforms appeared at the cabin door, their footsteps heavy on the carpeted aisle. "Ma'am," one officer said to Emily, his tone flat, "please gather your belongings and vacate this seat. Crew request." Emily's heart pounded, but her face remained a mask of calm. She activated her phone's camera, hitting record. "I'm Emily Harper, a platinum member," she said, her voice clear and deliberate. "This seat was reserved for me. I'm being asked to leave without any valid reason, simply because another passenger prefers it." Her words, steady and precise, were a beacon in the dim cabin, a challenge to the injustice unfolding. Sarah's lens caught it all. Emily's unwavering dignity, Lauren's trembling hands as she avoided eye contact, Michael's clenched fist, and Susan's triumphant smirk, her Hermes bag perched on her lap like a trophy. The officers repeated their demand, their voices robotic. "Please comply, or we'll have to enforce it." A murmur of dissent rippled through the cabin. A middle-aged man in row 5A spoke up. "This is unfair. She's done nothing wrong." Sarah zoomed in, capturing the passengers' growing unrest, their phones now recording too. Emily packed her laptop and documents with deliberate care, each movement a quiet act of defiance. She stood, her 5'6" frame radiating strength, and faced Susan. The space between them felt like a battlefield, one side rooted in archaic privilege, the other in unyielding justice. Susan's smirk widened, oblivious to the storm she'd ignited. Lauren's eyes brimmed with tears, her complicity weighing heavier with each second. Michael nodded to the officers, his expression cold, as if checking off a task. As Emily was escorted down the aisle, dozens of eyes followed, some sympathetic, some admiring, others heavy with guilt. A young man in row 6B stood, phone in hand, shouting, "This is discrimination! She did nothing wrong!" A woman nearby wept, whispering to her friend, "She's the first black woman I've seen stand up like this in first class." The officers' stiff strides echoed as they led Emily to the VIP lounge at SFO, where she was asked to wait while the matter was resolved. In the lounge, Emily didn't crumble. She opened her phone, drafted an email to her legal team, and attached her video footage. "Prepare all documentation," she texted her assistant. "This isn't over." Her fingers moved with precision, her mind already strategizing. Back on the plane. As the door closed and Flight 217 prepared for takeoff, the first-class cabin felt colder than ever. Susan sank into seat 2A, sipping a glass of complimentary champagne, her victory seemingly secured. Lauren's hands shook as she served drinks, her guilt a silent scream. Michael slumped in his seat, masking unease behind a hardened facade. But Sarah Evans wasn't done. As the plane climbed to 3,000 feet, she edited her footage on her laptop, adding subtitles and a headline, "Black CEO with platinum status kicked out of first-class seat for white VIP, cash changed hands." She tagged hashtag Justice for Emily and hashtag Skyalite Discrimination, mentioning Skyalite's official account and major news outlets like CNN and the New York Times, 15 minutes after landing at JFK. She uploaded the video to Twitter and YouTube, It exploded. Within an hour, the video racked up 500,000 views. Comments flooded in. "This is 2025, not 1955. Unbelievable." She showed her card and paid for the seat. What more does she need? White skin? Hashtags trended globally, and news outlets pounced. CNN ran a banner. "Viral video shows Black CEO removed from first-class seat despite valid ticket." The New York Times called it a stark example of latent prejudice in America. Even Fox News aired the clip. Decrying hypocrisy in luxury service, TikTokers and YouTubers reshared the footage, amplifying hashtag Justice for Emily. The public's outrage was a tidal wave. Skylight's social media accounts were bombarded with demands for accountability. "Fire the crew," one tweet read. "This is systemic racism," another declared. Influencers and activists joined in, with a prominent Black tech leader tweeting, "Today it's Emily, tomorrow it could be any of us." Anti-racism groups hosted live streams, citing the incident as a textbook case of bias in luxury services. Inside Skylight's headquarters in Chicago, panic simmered. Junior employees shared the video internally, whispering disgust. "If this is our service, I'm ashamed to work here." One posted on the company's intranet. The contact center was flooded with thousands of calls and emails demanding answers. Who was this Emily Harper? Why was she targeted? And what role did Susan Reynolds' money play? Unbeknownst to the airline, Emily wasn't just a passenger. She was a 25% shareholder in Skylight and the CEO of Tech Trend Innovations, a company powering the airline's $50 million digital transformation. Her calm in the lounge wasn't resignation. It was the quiet before a storm. As she scrolled through supportive messages pouring in from strangers, her phone buzzed with a call from her lawyer. "We've got everything we need," he said. "This video is gold." Back on the plane, passengers who'd witnessed the incident vowed to act. Some uploaded their own videos, others drafted complaints. Sarah, now a hero to millions online, received messages from activists and journalists. "You've started something big," one read. The cabin, once a bastion of privilege, had become a stage for truth. Emily's removal wasn't just a personal injustice. It was a spark igniting a movement. And as Skylight's executives scrambled in Chicago, they had no idea the fire was about to consume their carefully curated empire. The glittering Chicago headquarters of Skylight Airlines buzzed with panic, a stark contrast to the polished calm it usually projected. In the top-floor boardroom, executives hunched over laptops, their screens flashing with notifications as Sarah Evans' viral video tore through the internet. The footage, showing Emily Harper, a Black CEO, being forced from her first-class seat 2A to accommodate the entitled Susan Reynolds, had amassed 1 million views in 6 hours. Hashtags Justice for Emily and hashtag Skylight discrimination dominated Twitter, trending globally. News outlets from CNN to the Wall Street Journal ran blistering headlines. Black CEO ejected from first-class seat despite platinum status. But the real bombshell was yet to hit. Emily Harper sat in the VIP lounge at San Francisco International Airport, her phone buzzing with messages of support from strangers, activists, and even a prominent civil rights attorney who wrote, "We'll protect you. This won't be buried." She wasn't just a wronged passenger. At 32, Emily was the CEO of Tech Trend Innovations, a billion-dollar AI firm powering Skylight's $50 million digital transformation contract. More crucially, she held a 25% stake in the airline through affiliated investment funds, a share so significant it gave her sway over every major board vote. As she drafted an email to Skylight's leadership, her calm exterior masked a strategic mind ready to turn the tables. In Chicago, CEO Robert Thompson stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his 60-year-old frame rigid as he stared at the city's skyline 50 stories below. His phone vibrated incessantly. Calls from investors, partners, and media outlets demanding answers. The video had exposed not just a seating dispute, but a brazen act of discrimination. Susan slipping cash to flight attendant Lauren Mitchell, Supervisor Michael Carter's threatening tone, and Captain David Sullivan's indifferent silence. Robert's throat tightened as his Vice President of External Affairs called, her voice urgent. "Mr. Thompson, we have a problem. The woman removed from that flight? It's Emily Harper." Robert frowned, the name unfamiliar among Skylight's VIP roster. The VP forwarded a dossier, and as Emily's LinkedIn photo loaded, her poised smile and title as CEO of TechTrend, his stomach dropped. The file detailed her 25% stake, her company's critical AI contract, and her status as the sole candidate for a deal that was Skylight's lifeline against competitors. Without Emily's technology, the airline's digital upgrades, cost-cutting measures, and customer service innovations would collapse. If she withdrew her stake, the stock market would tank Skylight's shares, triggering a domino effect of investor pullouts and financial ruin. The boardroom was a pressure cooker. Executives exchanged frantic glances, their usual confidence replaced by dread. "If this hits Wall Street, we're done," one director muttered, sweat beading on his brow. Robert's phone buzzed again, a call from a major investor. "Robert, what the hell is going on? CNBC's airing the clip non-stop. Is it true you ejected TechTrend's CEO over a seat?" The investor's voice was sharp. "Fix this in 24 hours, or we're liquidating our holdings." Emily's email landed in Robert's inbox like a thunderbolt. Subject: Urgent shareholder meeting request, corporate ethics and accountability. Her words were precise, unyielding. As Skylight's largest shareholder and CEO of TechTrend Innovations, I demand an emergency meeting with the full board at 4 p.m. today. I will present evidence of ethical violations, discrimination, and bribery implicating Lauren Mitchell, Michael Carter, and Captain David Sullivan. Skylight must terminate these individuals and disclose remedial actions. Failure to comply within 24 hours will result in my divestment of my 25% stake and termination of our $50 million contract. The legal, financial, and reputational consequences will rest with Skylight's leadership. The room fell silent. Robert reread the email, each word a nail in the coffin of Skylight's carefully curated image. Emily wasn't seeking an apology. She was demanding a reckoning. Her 25% stake wasn't just financial leverage, it was a sword that could dismantle the board, oust Robert, and sink the airline. The $50 million contract was the backbone of Skylight's future, and Emily held the power to pull it. Back at SFO, Emily strategized with her legal team via video call, her lead counsel, Raymond Oliver, a seasoned attorney with a track record of dismantling corporate misconduct, reviewed Sarah's video. "This is airtight," he said. "We've got bribery, discrimination, and abuse of authority on tape. We're ready to move if Skylight stonewalls." Emily nodded, her eyes focused. She wasn't driven by revenge, but by a vision of systemic change. Her company's AI tools were designed to eliminate bias in customer service. Ironic that she'd faced it head-on. On social media, the fire raged. Sarah's video hit 2 million views, with comments flooding in, "This is systemic racism in 2025. Skylight, you're done unless you fire those involved." Influencers, from TikTok creators to Black tech leaders, amplified the call for #JusticeForEmily. A prominent activist tweeted, "Emily Harper represents every person pushed out of their rightful place. This ends now." News outlets camped outside Skylight's headquarters, demanding interviews. The New York Times called it a wake-up call for corporate America. Even Fox News, rarely aligned with such causes, labeled it a shameful betrayal of customer trust. Inside Skylight, junior employees shared the video on internal channels, their disgust palpable. "This is who we work for?" one posted. "I'm embarrassed to wear this uniform." The contact center was overwhelmed. With thousands of emails and calls demanding transparency, who was Susan Reynolds? And why was her money enough to override policy? Why did Lauren and Michael accept bribes? And why did Captain Sullivan, a 30-year veteran, stand by? Susan, now settled in seat 2A as the plane landed at JFK, remained oblivious to the storm. She sipped her champagne, her smirk intact, believing her status had prevailed, but cracks were forming. Passengers who'd witnessed the incident glared as they disembarked, some whispering. She bought that seat with cash. Lauren, haunted by her own silence, avoided Susan's gaze, her hands still trembling. Michael, usually unflappable, felt a knot in his chest, sensing the weight of his actions. Captain Sullivan, back in the cockpit, dismissed the incident as routine protocol, but a flicker of unease crossed his mind. Robert, in Chicago, knew the truth was more terrifying than the hashtags. Skylight's culture of favoring regular VIPs like Susan, wealthy, white, and connected, had nurtured this crisis. For years, unwritten rules had prioritized privilege over policy, and now Emily Harper, the most powerful woman they'd underestimated, held their fate. Her silence since the email was deafening, a calm before a corporate earthquake. As the clock ticked toward 4 p.m., Robert gathered the board, their faces pale. They knew Emily's demands weren't negotiable. Terminate 3 long-serving employees, disclose their misconduct publicly? It was unprecedented. But the alternative, losing Emily's stake and contract, was corporate suicide. Investors were already circling, ready to jump ship. The media frenzy showed no signs of slowing, and Sarah's video was now a global rallying cry. Emily, in the SFO lounge, received a text from her communications chief. "The world's watching. Your move." She exhaled, her resolve unshaken. This wasn't just her fight. It was for every person pushed aside by invisible barriers of privilege. As Skylight braced for the emergency meeting, the airline stood on the brink, its fate hinging on a single woman's courage and the truth she'd forced into the light. The clock in Skylight Airlines' Chicago headquarters struck 4 p.m., and the boardroom felt like a courtroom on Judgment Day. The air was thick with dread as the emergency shareholder meeting began, its virtual screen dominated by Emily Harper's unyielding presence. The 32-year-old black CEO of Tech Trend Innovations, still in San Francisco, appeared against the sleek backdrop of her company's New York office, her minimalist black suit a stark contrast to the chaos she'd unleashed. Flanking her were her legal team, laptops open, armed with irrefutable evidence, Sarah Evans' viral video, passenger testimonies, and audio of Susan Reynolds' bribe to flight attendant Lauren Mitchell and supervisor Michael Carter. Captain David Sullivan's indifference was also captured, a silent accomplice to injustice. Emily's ultimatum hung over the room: terminate the trio, disclose their misconduct, or lose her 25% stake and $50 million AI contract. CEO Robert Thompson, his silver hair disheveled after a sleepless night, stood at the head of the table, his usual confidence eroded. The board. 12 executives in tailored suits sat in tense silence, their eyes darting between Robert and the screen. Sarah's video, now at 3 million views, had fueled a global firestorm. Hashtags Justice for Emily and hashtag Skylight Discrimination trended relentlessly, with news outlets like CNN and Bloomberg camped outside, demanding answers. Social media was merciless. Fire the crew. Skylight's racism is exposed. The pressure wasn't just external. Junior employees flooded internal channels with outrage. One writing, "If this is our culture, I'm out," Emily began, her voice calm but piercing. On Flight 217 from San Francisco to New York, I was removed from my rightfully reserved seat 2A, despite my platinum status, because a wealthier, white passenger demanded it. She clicked to a slide showing Sarah's video, Susan slipping $100 bills to Lauren, Michael's threatening whisper, "We can make your flight very unpleasant," and David's folded arms as security escorted Emily out. "This isn't just a seating error," Emily continued. "It's discrimination, bribery, and abuse of authority, enabled by a system that prioritizes privilege over fairness." Each word landed like a gavel, and the boardroom grew quieter. Robert swallowed hard, his hands gripping the table. He'd drafted apologies, offered Emily dividends, even a board seat. But her gaze, steady, principled, allowed no compromise. She presented passenger testimonies, a woman in row 4C who called the incident blatant racism, a man in 5A who said, "She showed her card, and they still humiliated her." The video's audio captured Susan's smug declaration, "This seat is mine," and Lauren's complicit silence. Emily's final slide listed her demands: immediate termination of Lauren, Michael, and David, public disclosure of their misconduct, and systemic reforms to Skylight's culture. The boardroom erupted in murmurs. A director protested, "Lauren's been with us 10 years. David's a 30-year veteran." But Sarah's footage, Susan's bribe, Michael's threat, David's inaction, left no room for defense. Emily's voice cut through. "This isn't about individuals. It's about a culture that's been rotten for years. If Skylight can't act, I'll divest my 25% stake and cancel our $50 million contract." The threat was a death knell. Her stake could topple the board. Her contract was Skylight's lifeline. Investors were already calling, threatening to pull out if the crisis wasn't contained. Robert raised his hand, his voice strained. "Ms. Harper, we take full responsibility and offer our deepest apology. But terminating 3 long-serving employees, can we consider alternatives?" Emily's response was swift, unyielding. "Accountability isn't negotiable. A company that shields violators has no future." A progressive shareholder nodded, adding, "If Emily walks, I'm out too." The room froze, the reality sinking in. Skylight's survival hinged on Emily's demands. After a tense vote, the board relented. By 5:30 p.m., Skylight's website and social media posted a statement. Lauren Mitchell, Michael Carter, and Captain David Sullivan have been terminated for professional misconduct, including discrimination and ethical violations, damaging Skylight's reputation. We commit to a full investigation and comprehensive reforms. The announcement hit like a shockwave. News outlets ran breaking news. Skylight fires crew in discrimination scandal. Twitter erupted with hashtag #JusticeForEmily posts. Finally, accountability. Emily Harper's changing the game. Lauren, in the crew lounge at JFK, saw the statement on her phone. Her hands shook, tears spilling as she packed her belongings. She'd accepted Susan's bribe out of fear of losing her job, of defying the regulars like Susan who tipped generously. Now, her 10-year career was ashes, her silence a choice she'd regret forever. Michael, in his Chicago apartment, slammed his fist on the table, his anger masking guilt. He'd enforced Skylight's unwritten rules for years, believing power meant compliance. Now, branded a discriminator, he faced a shattered reputation. Captain David, a 30-year veteran, sat in his hotel room, clutching his pilot's cap. His indifference, rooted in decades of unchecked authority, had cost him everything. He stared at the skyline, his jaw tight, unable to fathom how one lapse erased a lifetime's legacy. Susan Reynolds faced her own reckoning. Her law firm, where she was a founding partner, convened an emergency meeting. By evening, they suspended her indefinitely, citing ethical breaches. Headlines dubbed her Airline Susan, the face of privilege gone wrong. On Twitter, Hashtag Airline Susan trended, with memes mocking her Hermes bag and smug smirk. Her firm's clients canceled contracts, and colleagues distanced themselves. Susan, once untouchable, sat alone in her Manhattan penthouse, scrolling through scathing comments. Her world crumbling. Emily, still in San Francisco, watched the news unfold on her phone. She felt no triumph, only resolve. Her fight wasn't for vengeance, but for a system where no one's pushed aside for their skin or status. Her legal team prepared contingencies. If Skyalite resisted reforms, she'd release more evidence to the media and file a federal class action suit. Her assistant texted, "The world's behind you, Emily. What's next?" She replied, "We rebuild, fairly." Passengers from Flight 217 amplified the story. The man in 5A posted his own video, captioned, "I saw racism in real time." The woman in 4C wrote a blog. "Emily Harper stood for all of us." Sarah Evans, now a viral hero, received interview requests from CNN and NBC. Her footage had sparked a movement, and she vowed to keep pushing. "This isn't just Emily's story," she tweeted. "It's everyone's who's been silenced." In Chicago, Robert Thompson faced the board, his face haggard. "We've fired them," he said, "but this isn't over. Emily's right. Our culture's broken." The board nodded, some reluctantly. Knowing reforms were inevitable, Skyalite's stock wobbled. But Emily's silence on divestment offered a sliver of hope. The airline stood at a crossroads, embrace change or collapse under the weight of its own flaws. As the sun set over Chicago, Emily prepared for her keynote in New York, her resolve unshaken. The firings were a start, but she knew true justice meant dismantling the system that enabled Susan, Lauren, Michael, and David. The world watched, and Skyalite's fate rested on its next move. For Emily, this was no longer about Seat 2A. It was about a future where every seat, in every cabin, belonged to those who earned it. The dust had barely settled from Skyalite Airline's seismic firings, but the storm was far from over. In Chicago, the airline's headquarters buzzed with a new kind of energy. Nervous, hopeful, transformative. Emily Harper, the 32-year-old Black CEO of Tech Trend Innovations, had forced a reckoning, not just with her 25% stake and $50 million AI contract, but with her unyielding vision for change. After the terminations of flight attendant Lauren Mitchell, supervisor Michael Carter, and Captain David Sullivan, Skyalite announced an unprecedented move, a 48-hour suspension of all flights to conduct mandatory anti-racism and unconscious bias training for every employee, from gate agents to executives. This wasn't a corporate checkbox. It was a revolution. And Emily was its architect. In a press conference streamed live from Chicago, Emily stood beside CEO Robert Thompson, her presence commanding yet serene. "We can't undo the past," she said, her voice steady. "But we can rebuild a system where respect isn't reserved for a privileged few." Robert, his face etched with fatigue, nodded. "Skyalite failed Emily Harper and our values. We're committed to change, starting now." The announcement sent shockwaves through the industry. Flights were grounded, passengers rebooked, and refunds issued, costing millions. Yet, CNN hailed it as a bold step for justice. While the New York Times called it a watershed moment in aviation, Emily didn't stop at firings. She collaborated with psychologists, diversity experts, and her Tech Trend AI team to design immersive training. Every Skyalite employee, over 1,000 across the U.S., engaged in role plays, stepping into the shoes of both victims and perpetrators of bias. In mock scenarios, they faced dilemmas like those on Flight 217, a passenger unfairly targeted, a bribe offered, a colleague's silence. Boardrooms and airport lounges became training hubs, with facilitators challenging employees to confront their prejudices. a gate agent in Dallas admitted. "I've favored VIPs without questioning why. I see it now." The most radical move was Emily's Second Chance program, a months-long initiative to help wrongdoers atone and grow. Remarkably, Lauren, Michael, and David volunteered, their participation under intense scrutiny. Lauren, once a poised flight attendant, sat in a Chicago training room, her eyes red from sleepless nights. She'd accepted Susan Reynolds' bribe out of fear of losing her job, of defying Skylight's unwritten rules. In early sessions, she deflected blame, citing pressure from regulars like Susan. But a facilitator's question cut deep. "Why did you value a tip over someone's dignity?" Lauren broke down, sobbing. "I was scared to speak up. I chose safety over what's right." She began journaling, confronting memories of staying silent when colleagues faced bias, vowing to change. Michael, the stern supervisor, struggled with his anger. In a Seattle training session, he initially lashed out, blaming Emily for ruining his career. But watching Sarah's video, his own threatening words to Emily, cracked his defenses. A role play forced him to play a passenger facing discrimination, and the shame hit hard. "I thought I was just doing my job," he admitted, voice trembling. "But I was part of the problem." He started mentoring younger employees, sharing his mistakes to prevent theirs. A small step toward redemption. Captain David, a 30-year veteran, faced the deepest reckoning in a New York training room. He rewrote incident reports from Emily's perspective, a task that left him in tears. "I thought following protocol was enough," he said. "I forgot every passenger deserves equal respect." His pride, once tied to his pilot's cap, shifted to teaching others to avoid his errors. He led discussions, admitting, "My silence enabled injustice. I'll spend my life making that right." Emily's program wasn't soft. Participants faced victims of bias, passengers, colleagues, even community members, who shared raw stories of exclusion. Lauren met a black flight attendant who'd been passed over for promotions due to fit. Michael heard from a Latino gate agent demoted for challenging a VIP. David listened to a passenger who'd been profiled at security. These encounters, paired with tech trends' AI-driven bias simulations, forced raw self-reflection. An anonymous survey revealed 85% of Skylight employees had witnessed or ignored unfair treatment. Stunning leadership. "We've been blind," Robert admitted in a closed-door meeting. Skylight's reforms went beyond training. Emily pushed for an independent oversight board to monitor HR policies, ensuring fairness in hiring, promotions, and customer service. She demanded diversity in leadership, with 2 tech trend appointees joining the board. Robert, initially resistant, saw the necessity. "Without this, we're finished," he told directors. The media praised the changes, with MSNBC noting, "Skylight's setting a standard for corporate accountability." Social media buzzed with support. "If an airline can change, what's stopping others?" One tweet read, "Susan Reynolds, the VIP whose bribe sparked the crisis, faced her own fallout. Her law firm's suspension became permanent after clients fled. #Airline Susan memes flooded Twitter. Her Hermes bag a symbol of hollow privilege." In private, Susan grappled with isolation, her once loyal network shunning her. She enrolled in a diversity workshop, a tentative step toward accountability. Though her journey lagged behind the others, Emily, now in New York for her keynote, watched Skylight's transformation unfold. She felt no joy in the firings or Susan's downfall. Her goal was systemic change. Her team prepared for the next phase. If Skylight resisted further reforms, she'd escalate with a federal lawsuit. But the training's early success, employees sharing stories of growth online, gave her hope. A Skylight mechanic tweeted, I've worked here 15 years and never spoke up. This training's changing me. The public's response was electric. Hashtag justice for Emily evolved into hashtag Skyalite Reborn. With passengers praising the airline's transparency, investors, initially wary, saw potential in a reformed Skyalite, stabilizing its stock. Emily's vision, justice through accountability, not punishment, began to take root. As training continued, employees like Lauren, Michael, and David emerged not as villains but as proof that change was possible. The airline, once a symbol of privilege, stood on the cusp of a new era, driven by a young black woman who refused to yield. 6 months after Emily Harper's stand on Skyalite Airlines Flight 217, the skies over America felt different. Skyalite, once a symbol of privilege and prejudice, had transformed into a beacon of fairness, its reputation rebuilt on the foundation of accountability and reform. The 48-hour flight suspension and anti-bias training, driven by Emily's vision, had reshaped the airline's culture. Customer satisfaction soared to 92%, per AJD Power Survey, and bookings surged as passengers embraced the hashtag Skyalite Reborn movement. From gate agents in Atlanta to pilots in Los Angeles, employees wore their badges with pride, trained to see every passenger as equal, not just wealthy or white. Emily Harper, the 32-year-old black CEO of Tech Trend Innovations, stood at a podium in New York's Javits Center, addressing the Global Ethics and Technology Conference. Her keynote, "Building Justice in Systems of Power," drew a standing ovation. She wasn't just a survivor of discrimination, she was a global icon, her story inspiring corporate leaders from Silicon Valley to Wall Street. Time magazine named her Person of the Year, lauding her as a visionary who turned pain into progress. Yet, Emily remained grounded, her focus on systemic change, not personal glory. Her company's AI tools, now integrated into Skyalite's operations, flagged bias in real time, ensuring fair treatment across 1,000 daily passenger interactions. Skyalite's reforms endured. The Independent Oversight Board, with 2 Tech Trend appointees, enforced transparent HR policies, boosting diversity. 30% of new hires were people of color, and 3 women of color joined senior leadership. CEO Robert Thompson, once resistant, became a vocal advocate. Speaking at industry summits about unlearning privilege, he credited Emily, saying, "She saved us from ourselves." The airline's stock, once teetering, climbed 15%, and investors hailed Skyalite as a model for corporate redemption. The Second Chance program, Emily's brainchild, bore remarkable fruit. Lauren Mitchell, the former flight attendant who'd accepted Susan Reynolds' bribe, found purpose as a trainer for new Skyalite hires. Her workshops, raw with honesty, shared her regret. "I silenced my conscience for $500. Never again." Employees listened, moved by her transformation. Michael Carter, the once stern supervisor, volunteered with the Chicago Youth Program, mentoring teens on standing up to injustice. "I was the bully," he admitted to a group of 15-year-olds. "Now, I'm here to lift you up." Captain David Sullivan, stripped of his wings, taught aviation ethics at a community college in Dallas. His classes, packed with aspiring pilots, emphasized, "Authority means nothing without integrity." Susan Reynolds, the VIP whose arrogance sparked the crisis, faced a slower journey. Her law firm's permanent dismissal and the hashtag Airline Susan backlash left her isolated. She enrolled in diversity training, driven less by remorse than necessity. By 2025's end, she volunteered at a legal aid clinic, helping low-income clients, her Hermes bag replaced by a canvas tote. Her progress was halting, but her colleagues noted a shift, a flicker of humility where entitlement once reigned. Sarah Evans, the journalist whose video ignited the movement, leveraged her platform for change. With a book deal and TED Talk, she championed citizen journalism, urging, "Your phone can expose truth." Her Twitter following grew to 5,000, amplifying stories of everyday injustice. She stayed in touch with Emily, calling her the sister I never had. The ripple effects reached beyond Skyalite. Airlines like Delta and United adopted bias training. Citing Emily's case, corporate America took note, with tech giants like Google integrating Tech Trends AI to audit customer service. The U.S. Department of Transportation launched a task force to investigate aviation discrimination, inviting Emily as a consultant. Her story inspired grassroots movements, with hashtag Justice for Emily evolving into a call for equity across industries. Emily's legacy was personal, too. She mentored young Black women in tech, funding scholarships through Tech Trend at a gala in Harlem. A 19-year-old coder tearfully thanked her. "You showed me I belong in any room." Emily smiled, her eyes misty, knowing her fight was for them. As Skyalite's first anniversary of reform approached, Robert invited Emily to a ceremony at Chicago's O'Hare Airport. Employees, passengers, and media gathered as a gate was named Harper Gate in her honor. Lauren, Michael, and David attended, their presence a testament to redemption. Emily spoke briefly. "Justice isn't a moment, it's a movement. Keep pushing. Now, it's your turn. Where do you see injustice? In your workplace, community, or daily life? Speak up, record it, share it, like Sarah. Your voice can spark change, like Emily. Your courage can rewrite systems. Stand for fairness, because every seat, at 3,000 feet or on the ground, belongs to those who fight for it.